So everybody wants 1200 watt lights that can overpower the sun, or you can run so low power that it's basically silent, and those are great. But there's also benefit to small lights like these. These are two different lights from SmallRig, the RC60C and the RC100B. I'm going to talk about these in particular, but also just the general benefits of small lights like this. And these are the reason that my last few A-roll shots have, in my opinion, looked as good as they have, because I'm able to just use these to light the background or use as a hair light super easily because they're so small and foreshadowing, battery powered. And I think that's where this shot in particular is falling a little bit short, because I don't have these set up right now, but I'll set them up in a second. So as a little bit of disclosure, all of this SmallRig stuff except for the batteries were sent to me by SmallRig. So take that as you will. This isn't sponsored by SmallRig or anything. They have no idea I'm making this video. However, there are affiliate links to everything in the description. So the first big benefit to small lights like this is that they are just small and light. They can go on basically any stand. You could chuck them on a tripod. You could just sit them on a table if you needed to, and basically anything will hold them quite well. You don't need like a full light stand. However, they will go on a light stand. So they're just very versatile when it comes to that. I've even used this one on a mic stand, which I barely even trust to hold a mic, but it is strong enough to just hold this because this is so light. And because they're so small, they can also fit into small spaces that you may not be able to put a 300 watt light that needs to go on a C-stand or something like that. You could just put this on a small stand or even a little tripod, and it'll just fit in the corner here. I've actually used it in the corner right here next to me to shine a light through the stairs to create a pattern on the back wall there, kind of like that. So that is super helpful because there's no way that I'm going to easily get, one of my bigger lights in this position without putting, a whole rig here to get a C-stand there, or just putting the big light on the floor. But then the other big issue with that is power. I would then have to run a cord to somewhere, whereas these either can be battery powered or have a built-in battery. So the RC60C is a full color 60 watt light. So it can do the whole RGB range. It has an HSI mode and can go all the way to 10,000 Kelvin, all the way down to 2500 Kelvin. But it actually has a built-in battery. So not only can you just power it via USB-C, which is also super handy to be able to do, just plug it into a USB-C cable, as long as you have a power source that can output 60 watts, because if you don't, you'll be limited with the power that you can use. But because this has a built-in battery, I can just put this right there on a little stand or on a little tripod, and that's it. That's all I need to do. Don't need to plug it in, don't need to put it on much rigging, and it's just super versatile in that way. Now the battery in this isn't massive, but at 100%, so 60 watt output, it'll last about 45 minutes, which is generally plenty long for recording a video like this. And also most of the time I don't have it at 100%. So if you run it at 1%, it'll last 24 hours. So having just that built-in battery, it does make it a little bit heavier, but I think that is far outweighed by the fact that you can just use it as is and you don't need to plug it into anything or even attach a V-mount battery. Speaking of V-mount batteries, the RC100B does have a built-in V-mount plate on the back of it. So you can just chuck any V-mount battery right on there. This is the SmallRig VB99 Pro, and this is perfect for the 100 watt light because it's a 99 watt hour battery. So it should theoretically last about an hour at 100%. You can obviously use bigger batteries. I also have the VB212, although I generally use that on my camera rig and I'll save these ones for lights. But this package is almost as small as this one. It's just a little bit bigger and a little bit heavier, but it's also 40 watts more power, so it's going to be able to get brighter. However, it is only bi-color, not full color, but that's sort of a whole different thing. As I mentioned, the RC60C can be powered via USB-C. It also comes with a little mount for power banks. So if you have a small power bank you want to just plug in to that light, you can mount that straight onto it and run a short USB-C cable straight into it to power it. So that could be handy. The RC100B, on the other hand, has that built-in V-mount plate, but it also can come with this V-mount to NPF adapter. So the V-mount side will go straight onto the back of the light, and then it has two NPF ports for your, 970 batteries like I have here. Now, the one limitation with this in particular, at least these batteries, is they are limited to 60 watts. So you can't actually go all the way up to 100% with this. Maybe if you get like SmallRig's new smart NPF batteries or other brand fancy NPF batteries, you might be able to go up to 100 watts. I'm not sure. But with this setup, you can only go up to 60%, which is fine for the most part, unless you need a really bright light. But also, this is generally not how I would use this. I would either run it with a V-mount or use one of the ports right here. Now, this is a DC port right here, which is exactly what it sounds like. You just plug in DC, it comes with the cable, and you can just plug that into the wall just like you would any other bigger light. So if you want the most reliability out of any of the power solutions, that's probably the way to go. That's generally how I use this if I can. Otherwise, I'll use a V-mount battery. You can also power it via USB-C power delivery, which is also super handy. Now, I have had slight issues in the past. I used to have this plugged in to USB-C, even into a 100 watt brick that should be able to just pass that 100 watt through. So it should have been fine, but it occasionally like flickered out and came back for like a quarter of a second. It was super minor, but there probably is a couple of examples in old videos that did happen. So that's why I switched to use the DC input most of the time. However, the USB-C is totally fine. It's just, yeah, it will flicker maybe sometimes if your power source isn't super reliable. And when it comes to modifiers, they both come with a small reflector that most cob lights would come with anyway. Now, this is almost a Bowens mount, but it is like a mini Bowens mount. I don't know if it has an actual name, but it's basically Bowens mount, but it's smaller. So it's not going to fit standard Bowens accessories. I think you might be able to get an adapter, but any of the stuff that comes with these lights will obviously work. And then SmallRig does make modifiers specifically for this series of lights with this smaller Bowens mount. So you're just gonna put it on there, twist, and it locks on. And then you can just use that as, a hair light or something like that. Usually this is how I'll use it if I'm, shooting it through the stairs like this to control it a little bit. If I'm using it as a hair light, for example, sometimes I'll use this small softbox. This is the RAD30, which is a 30 centimeter softbox, has a grid, has diffusion, everything like that. So if you do need some diffusion and you want a grid on it to control it and everything like that, just basically turn this into a smaller version of the 300 watt light with a 90 centimeter softbox that I've got as my key right now. Now there's the 30 centimeter softbox and the 60 centimeter one, which is kind of too big for this frame, but it's the same thing. It's just a softbox, parabolic light dome sort of thing. There's nothing really special about it. It's just a softbox and it fits these lights. That's pretty much it. I generally don't use this one all that much because if I'm gonna use a softbox this big, I'll probably use a bigger light anyway. But if I did need a really small package and I didn't want to take bigger lights and stands and modifiers, I could just sort of still take this. However, generally I'll use either the 30 if I need a really small one, or I'll just use a bigger light with a bigger softbox if I need a bigger source. And I'm pretty sure they also have a lantern for these lights. They probably have others as well. I don't know if they have a Fresnel or anything, but I'm pretty sure they have a lantern and these softboxes. So that's pretty much all you'll really need for that sort of stuff. The standard reflector, a couple different size softboxes, and a lantern. It's kind of all you need. Sometimes you might need a Fresnel. I actually do have their Bowens mount Fresnel, the SmallRig one. I'll leave a link for that in the description. That can be handy to control light a little bit more because it is adjustable. You can sort of zoom it in and out to control the focused area of light, I guess. But now let's talk about the different uses for lights like this. And first one that I can sort of think of would be a fill or maybe a hair light. I generally don't use fill lights all that much. I just try and wrap my key enough. To use this as a hair light, for example, I'd put it up here behind me. And how I would attach it to the light stand is with this little bracket that it comes with. On the bottom, it has a 1/4-20 thread with like really big locating pins. Don't know if they would work with like regular locating pin stuff, but you just screw that onto there, and then you can put this straight onto a light stand. So what I'll do in this case is I'll put the 30 centimeter softbox on here, and then I'm gonna put it on a light stand just out of frame behind me, and then you'll see what that does. So now that I've added that back there, that is currently at 10%. That is the 100 watt one at 10%, and I've just got the V-mount battery powering it, with the 30cm softbox. And as you can see, it's doing a couple of things. One, it's adding a bit of a rim light here, which is motivated by the light back there. So that's also something to keep in mind. Pretty sure I've made a video about this before. So go watch that actually, if it's somewhere. But also what it did is it added some texture back here on the stairs, because that was just all sort of dark before, but now there's some difference in the light, so it's creating some dimension in that background. And before I do anything with the 60-watt light, I just want to talk about one other option that I'm not really going to use right now because I don't need to, but one thing you can do with a small light like this, and this is actually something they did on Loki season 2. Well, that came out like 2 years ago now. Wow. On that, what they did is, because they lit everything 360, basically, they lit all the rooms, there was often no eye light. So they put a small light like this on the end of a boom pole with a softbox or a lantern similar size to the 30cm one. And then they just had that over behind the camera somewhere at all times, no matter which way the camera was facing. So it gave a catch light in the eyes of all the characters. Now, if you are unaware about catch lights, it is basically just that little light that you can see in my eye right now. My key is creating a decently bright catch light, I guess, and it's very large too, because I'm actually using a 90cm softbox, shooting it through a curtain, so that's why it's so soft. But let's say I didn't have that nice key there, what I could do is, if I put this down really, really low, I'll put it at 1%, and now, this is going to be lighting my face a lot, but as you can see, it's a lot brighter in my eye. There's a little reflective bit in my eye. Now, generally, I wouldn't want to do something that bright, but that's when you would use, a softbox or something, just to create a little bit of a softer but prominent catch light. Oh yeah, and one other thing that isn't a real use for this, but a lot of people test like anamorphic flares or just flares in general with like a little torch. These are great because they're a much larger source and you can really see what the flares are going to look like. And one thing that I love about this Blazar Remus that I have now, the 33mm, I have this in silver flare, which means it takes on the color of the light. So now the flares are now nice and warm. So this would be what the amber flare would look like. And then if I cool it way down, now to be fair, this isn't particularly blue, this is 10,000 Kelvin. Go to something a little more blue, then those flares can be really blue. That's 100%, I'm gonna turn that way down. So yeah, cool way to test anamorphic flares if that's a thing you're into. Now what I'm gonna do with this one is I'm gonna actually put it up the stairs there and point it down to give me a little bit more of an actual hair light, because this one back here isn't high enough to actually hit the top of my head, and I can't get it in the right spot to be in frame while having it back here. So I'm actually gonna put this at the top of the stairs and shine it down. So it's gonna cause a couple of things. So now that it's up there behind me, it's hitting my hair on the top here and it's creating more of that like actual hair light look, which just sort of brings me out from the background and creates a little bit more dimension. And I've kept it at a similar color temperature to, the light back there that you can see. So in your brain, it just sort of makes sense that maybe that light is doing all of this, even though it's not. And if you watch some of my recent videos where I've shot in this area here, you might have noticed the blue or kind of blue light that I've actually shot through the stairs that was meant to sort of mimic sunlight going through the stairs. It does actually look like that when the sun's going through it, it's just the sun doesn't go through that much, so I've just sort of extended it by putting a light where light doesn't come from. So I'm just gonna really quickly grab the light back here and do that. Also, another thing that comes with these lights, or this came with the 60-watt one, is this little handle that it has a 1/4-20 on the top and a 1/4-20 on the bottom, and it just screws straight into the bottom, so then if you need to hand hold a light, you can. Now, the reason that I didn't actually set this up for this shot in particular is because you can see on the wall there, so I would need to rig up some more stuff to control, this spill. But if I just shine that light through the stairs there, you can sort of see it's creating a bit of a shadow over here and those stripes. And that's something that I've done in recent videos to sort of just create a bit more interest in the background and make it look somehow both more realistic and more stylized, if that makes sense. But that can be a big thing in cinematography, is adding lights to sort of fill gaps so things aren't just boring. And even now, like this section here is a little bit boring because there's no light here anymore because I took it down. There's no light hitting me on the side of my head here. So these sorts of lights are great to fill those gaps. Tube lights are also great. I have a couple of Amaran aperture tubes, but these are really handy because they're so much more powerful at 60 watts or 100 watts. Now, they're never going to replace a 300, 600, or 1200 watt light outside. Outside, this does almost nothing, so don't bother trying to use it as a key if you're out in the sun, because it's not going to overpower the sun in any way. But when you have control over your lighting, or you're just in a kind of dark scenario, these can be great to use as a key, or if not, just as fill, hair, catch, or accent and background lights. Now, both of these lights and everything else that I mentioned in this video are linked in the description if you want to go check those out. If you do buy them from SmallRig, it does help me a little bit too, because that is an affiliate link. But yeah, let me know if there's any interesting ways you could use these lights that I haven't mentioned, or what you think of small lights like this in general. Do the other things. I'll see you next time. Okay, bye.